Hello, and thank you for joining us. I'm Sandy Potter, along with Masonicare President and CEO, JP Venoit, Dr. Ronald Schwartz, our Senior Director for Continuum Health Services, and we're very happy to have a special guest with us again this week, Jennifer King. She is the Executive Director of the Masonic Charity Foundation of Connecticut. Welcome, Jennifer. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you, Sandy, for having me this morning.
It's a pleasure to have you here. We'd love for you to tell everyone about the Masonicare Annual Appeal and the great ways you have supported residents, particularly during this pandemic.
Absolutely, Sandy. I'd be happy to talk about that. The Masonicare Annual Appeal is essentially at the heart of the Masonic Charity Foundation's program of fundraising, and it attracts donations of all sizes, and we're extremely grateful to all who choose to support it throughout the year. The annual appeal enables us to meet resident and patient needs when there's not any other funding source. And in particular, it enables us to purchase a lot of those little extras that are so meaningful to our residents that aren't funded by government reimbursement or insurance, but make a huge difference in enhancing quality of life. And I know you mentioned the pandemic, and it's been kind of interesting to see the trajectory with annual appeal funds being used during this time. You know, historically, I'll give an example to kind of illustrate the point. One of the most popular programs funded through the annual appeal historically has been the summer concert series. And it's a large gathering outside on the lawn of Masonicare Health Center with residents and staff, members of the community listening to music by a local band and enjoying refreshments. So when the pandemic happened, clearly that could not happen. That was one of our uses of funds that we had to set aside and say, we need to try and do something different. This isn't going to work this year. So what we've seen instead is other uses of funds have become more prominent, have stepped up, and we've put a little more resources into them. And just to give you a few examples, newspaper subscriptions in the resident library, we've increased those. Things that keep our residents, because we want them to be safe, we want them to feel connected to the outside world. That's the common theme behind them. So the newspaper subscriptions are one. I would say the satellite TV that the foundation funds has never been more popular. It brings a wide array of programming to our residents so they can watch all their favorite shows, either in their rooms or in the resident lounges. And also the iPads that we have purchased have really been put to good use. The team at the Masonicare Health Center identified the need for more, and we purchased those using annual appeal donations. And the nice thing is hearing JP talk about the statistics of all the video chats that were made possible between residents and loved ones with those iPads that we purchased. And then the final example I have for you is the sundries cart, which was kind of modified to be brought onto the floors. The sundries cart, it's a small cart full of personal care products and snacks and cards and magazines that it brings in supplies from the gift shop, puts them on the cart so they go up to the resident floors. So I think it's been brought back online in a socially distanced fashion it goes room to room, with the staff, obviously wearing masks and bringing the offerings in the gift shop right to the resident rooms instead of having residents obviously congregate down there is not a good idea right now. So we thought that was another great use of funds, a clever kind of recreation of an existing annual appeal program.
Absolutely, such wonderful and unique ideas. And JP, programs like these mean so much to those we serve and to their families.
It's made a substantial impact to all of our residents in our healthcare center. Jennifer talked about the virtual visits. We're now over 16,000 visits using those iPads. So think about that. That is a connection that we wouldn't have been able to do if we didn't have those funds from the Charity Foundation to do that. So 16,000 visits already. And we're going to continue to do that even though we are open to visitation. It's still another mechanism for that connection. You've heard me say this many, many times. The little things make such a difference to those that we serve. This is just one of them. The sundries is another. One that Jennifer didn't bring up, but we are starting to see a lot of is our CNAs doing the out trips with residents who need to go to doctor's appointments. That is starting to pick back up. So we have the ability to do so much more because of these donations that we receive. And as we continue to see some normalcy coming out of COVID, I will tell you, I think we're going to be doing more, because it really has changed how we deliver service to our residents in our nursing home. And I'm so proud of the fact that we've been able to do some things such as the iPads, such as the sundries, such as the newspapers, the satellite TV. Many people may not realize this, but most nursing homes, we don't provide the same level of service we do through the Charity Foundation. So I'm happy to say that we are really delivering on our promise with some of these little things that are making the difference for those that we serve.
It's just terrific, and that's what it's all about. Switching to medical news this week, Dr. Schwartz, COVID-19 variants continue to be troublesome, and some may even be showing signs of resistance to the current vaccines. What does the latest data show about that?
Well, Sandy, I actually got a lot to say about this, but first let me just welcome Jennifer. Jennifer's been my friend for a long time. It's an honor to work with you. You know, we were talking a little bit before we started doing the filming for the show, like where I get some of my inspirational quotes every week. And you're right, it started through the Charity Foundation calendar. I'm honored to be a donor through the Masonicare Charity Foundation, but that calendar is great and it kind of inspired me. And then each week I get quotes from other sources, but I certainly use that at least 50% of my material. So thank you. So now I'm going to turn to COVID and variants. And actually, I'll give you credit, Sandy. You know, we talk a lot of, preparing for these shows. This is like 6 months in a row that we've been doing these shows. That's quite a bit of shows. And you helped me find a really good article that kind of talks about, really, the article, the title of it is, Will COVID-19 Vaccines Protect You Against Variants? 9 questions about variants answered. This was a pretty long article, let's face it was about 10, 12 pages. I tried to condense it, and I'm gonna move along quickly, but I tried to condense it into like a page or so. And I'm just gonna read these points that they brought out, because I think they brought it out very, very clearly and succinctly. So the first question is, what is a variant? So really what they say is a variant is a collection of a group of mutations. And we've talked before many times about the coronavirus being an RNA virus, like the flu. And every year the flu mutates. It's not unusual that the coronavirus would mutate as well. And the second question is, why did variants show up all of a sudden? So really it's the reason is that, more and more people are traveling to different countries, and with more spread, more infections, there are more mutations that can occur. The third one is, which COVID-19 variants are most concerning? So this is kind of like alphabet and number soup. So I'm going to read these out because I can't memorize all these different variants. But so there's a B.1.1.7 variant. This is the UK variant. So this is really becoming, spread worldwide, and is probably going to be the most dominant variants in the United States very shortly. There's the B.1.3.5.1 variant. This is in South Africa, and the P.1 variant in Brazil. And what they find is that these variants are more transmissible, and they're also like more resistant to treatments, such as for COVID-19, like monoclonal antibodies that we've talked about in the past. The fourth is, how do COVID-19 variants work and what makes them so dangerous? They work by mutations on the spike protein, and this spike protein is really what allows this virus to infect human cells. And these mutations they enhance affinity for the virus to attack human cells. We're almost done, so don't worry. The fifth one is, are COVID-19 variants driving the devastation in India? So you may know by looking at the news that there have been like over 300,000. The daily new infections in India hasn't dropped below 300,000 in the past 2 weeks. And there's a variant called B.1.6.1.7. That's almost like a double mutation. So if one mutation wasn't bad enough, now you got a double mutation. So certainly that can increase transmissibility and certainly can play a part in what we're seeing. Number 6, do COVID-19 treatments still work against the variants? So again, they work, but like we were talking about with these monoclonal antibodies, they seem to be somewhat less effective. Number 7, will vaccines still protect you against the variants? It does look like the vaccines which are approved so far in the United States, Moderna, Johnson & Johnson, and Pfizer, are effective against variants, but they're still studying that. We don't know the full effects at this point, and that's what's going to be determined as time goes on. So this is why the next question, 8, will we need new vaccines or boosters to protect against the variants? We don't actually know this yet. There is, it does seem that there's still strong evidence that the vaccines work against the variants, but we're not sure whether they're going to have to restructure or reformulate the vaccine. And that's not unusual because, every year the flu vaccine is reformulated. So that's certainly a possibility. And the final one, will variants thwart our attempts to return to normal? So this is what they say, only if we let them. So that's a good point. And so what we're really talking about is still the majority of the population isn't immunized. So they still, it's still recommended to use good health practices and social distancing and wearing masks, hand washing, avoiding large crowds, and mainly getting vaccinated with the ultimate hope of what they call herd immunity, which is where when you see 70 to 80% of a population immunized, eventually the virus can't be transmitted anymore, can't replicate, and eventually fizzles out, which is sort of one of the goals that we have with everything that we're doing. And finally, I'll just mention, which is big news, that the FDA added their EUA. Now we know all these abbreviations, the emergency use authorization for the Pfizer vaccine to young people 12 to 15 years old. And they're going to talk about that a little bit more even today. So that's very exciting news and continues to be a big boost forward to what we're looking for with freedom. So finally, I'll just spend a minute or so on my inspirational quote for the week to help us all get through things. And this is in honor of my friend JP. So this actually comes from Yogi Berra. And Yogi Berra was best known, if you don't know, he was a catcher for the New York Yankees. And I mean, he did other things as well. He played 19 seasons in Major League from 1946 to 1963, and as well in 1965. And he was also a manager and coach for the New York Yankees and the Mets. But what you may not know is Yogi was in the Navy in World War II. He was a gunner's mate. He was actually wounded at the Battle of Normandy, and he got the Purple Heart. And Yogi had certain sayings, they called it yogiism. Like he'd have certain words for the common, just nice common sense words that kind of pointed you in the right direction. So I'm only going to say 3 of them. He had plenty more, but so the first one, if you don't know where you're going, you'll end up somewhere else. So you think about that. If we didn't know where we were going, if we did with this pandemic, if we didn't have the coronavirus task force and the vaccine distribution task force and all the people that we have at Masonicare working together, we would end up somewhere else. Right now, we're moving in an excellent direction. Visitors are back in the building, and and our residents have a better quality of life. The second one is, when you come to a fork in the road, take it. So what does that mean? Well, it's both. You have to take certain chances in life, and you also have to make good choices. And for us, during this pandemic, we did have to, make certain choices and take certain chances to get where we are today. And this is the final point, and I think the most important point of everything I tried to say today. It ain't over till it's over. And I guess what that means is, as we talked about, there's still emerging variants, and we still need to be diligent, and we still have to follow good infection control practices. So once again, I thank everybody for all your hard work and your dedication, and wish you health and wish you peace. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Schwartz. We always appreciate you helping us go in the right direction. Well, thank you all so much for sharing your time and your insights with us today. And we thank you for joining us at home as well. Until we see you next time, we hope you'll stay safe and stay well.